recording. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to Ocean Futures Empowering Youth for Marine Conservation. We're really excited to have you here today. My name is Jordan Kilgore. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Youth Programs Coordinator at the New Brunswick Environmental Network. I'm coming to you today from the unceded traditional territories of the Mi'kmaq in what is currently known as Moncton, New Brunswick. But the NBEN operates on the homelands of the Wabanaki peoples, lands that are unceded, unsurrendered, and stolen. We honor the peace and friendship treaties, and we uphold Indigenous rights, title, and sovereignty. I now welcome everybody to introduce themselves in the chat, share what your name is and your pronouns, what traditional territories you're calling in from today, and if you have a favorite marine animal, to throw that in the chat as well. Just introduce yourself. Let's see if I can change my slides. Okay, cool. So just a quick overview of what the workshop is going to look like today. So we have two presentations, one from Aidan Isbell from ACAP St. John, and one from Matthew Abbott, the Conservation Council of New Brunswick. After they're done presenting, we're going to do a quick Q&A period where you'll be able to ask them any questions you have about their presentations. And then we're going to get into some breakout rooms where you're going to have the opportunity to take action on some of the things that you're hearing about today and do some fun activities and just have a chance to chat with one another. And then we're going to wrap up for the day. So to begin, we have Matt Abbott, who's the Fundy Baykeeper at the Conservation Council of New Brunswick, and I will stop sharing my screen somehow and let him start his presentation and tell you a little bit more about himself.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I just, as you were introducing me, Jordan, I was writing in the chat, and so I wrote alewife, but you'll learn the Bescotomakati name of the fish as one of my favorite little critters a little later. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start my timer. And thank you. It's nice to be amongst youth. As you can probably tell, I don't quite fall in that category anymore. You can probably tell by how long it's taken me to figure out how to share my screen as well. There we go. I'll just get it started. So what I want to do today is, oh, is it going to, there we go. Can you see that? Thumbs up, Jordan? Yeah, excellent. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what I do at the Conservation Council, Fundy Baykeeper, a little bit about the Bay of Fundy and why it's such a special place and what goes on here. I'm sure you've all heard that we have massive tides in the Bay of Fundy, and I want to give you a sense of how they create such a unique ecosystem. And then I want to introduce you to this fish on the screen. It's Zygnamegwa. That's in Passamaquoddy. In English, it's called an alewife. Or a Gaspereau. My personal theory is the more names a fish has, sometimes the more important it's been in the lives and culture of people, maybe, or people have noted its significance. And so that's what I'll do today. And I'll tell you, I'll sort of tell you a story about some of the exciting conservation work I've felt very lucky to be a part of, and give you some ideas on what I think we need to do, what we can do to help. So first, this is the Bay of Fundy. I'm not sure can people see my cursor on the screen?
Yes, we can, I think.
Perfect. So this is the Bay of Fundy. I think of it as this sort of long and shallow bay. It gets shallower as you go up, and it's sort of, in the next image, you'll see it kind of snake tongues at the top. But I'm showing you this map first because this is Google Maps, right? This is the kind of map we're used to seeing. It's focused on land. You get a sense of where the cities are. I live here in Guanisquam-Cook, St. Andrews. I know some of you are in St. John today and all over the province, I imagine. And we get a bit of a sense of what's going on in the ocean, even from a satellite image. You sort of see that there's some ups and downs in the water. But the maps we're used to looking at don't always give us a full sense of what's going on in the ocean. So what I like to do is pull out my bathymetry map. Now, you've probably heard the word topography. That's how we describe showing maps on land. So how to see where the highest mountain is, where the low areas of land. Bathymetry is the same thing, except it's for the ocean. So Bath, we're sort of hinting towards water there. So you get a really good sense of you get a better sense of why the Bay of Fundy is the way it is when you look at this bathymetry map. From the last map I showed you, I'll just see if I can go back to it quickly. This just all kind of looks the same. You get some hint that there might be a sandbank. But when you look at the bathymetry map, you see that this area called the Gulf of Maine, stemming all the way from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick down to Cape Cod, past Boston, Massachusetts, you see that it's really kind of a unique area of the ocean. It's not like the rest of the coastline. And we can almost think of it as a basin or sea within a sea. So it's a bit of its own ecosystem. So this area that you see along here where my cursor is, that's a big sandbank. And if you've spent time along the shoreline here, you know that we have a rocky shoreline. A lot of the sand that exists in our region is actually underwater. So the sandy beaches of Florida, when you get up to our area, all the sand, all that part of the geography is sitting underwater. But what that means is it's created this big basin. So what we have is we already see that we have a unique area. The darker the blue, the deeper the water. So what we have is like a deep basin, or we can almost think of it as a bath or a bathtub here. And as we go up into the Bay of Fundy, it gets shallower and it gets narrower. So already we've got a hint of why we have such big tides. But to understand the tides, it's important to get a sense of what tides are. And this is where I'd make you raise your hand and tell me what you think. And I bet some of you already know this if we were in the same room. But really, tide is just a big wave. If there were no continents, if there was no land on the ocean, the gravity from the moon and the sun would just create a big wave that would just be going around the earth constantly. The wave would just be going along. But since we have big continents in the way, that wave bumps into land and something happens called the bathtub effect. And it's actually a really simple idea. I was hanging out with my niece and nephew a few weeks ago, who are 3 and 1 respectively, and giving them a bath. And if kids splash around in a bath or push water, what will happen is they'll make a wave that goes up high on the end of the bath away from them. And then when it comes back down, the water level will actually get lower as that wave sloshes back and forth. So the tides is basically just the gravity, the force from the moon and the sun being that toddler, just constantly pushing water in the bath. So it's just sloshing back and forth across the ocean. But the Gulf of Maine, this area is so big that even if it wasn't connected to the bigger ocean, it would create its own little tide. And because the tide in this area, the Gulf of Maine, sloshes back and forth at about the same speed as the bigger tide comes back and forth between North America, South America, Europe, and Africa, that this tide meets up, and what we end up with is a tide that's sort of coming into the Gulf of Maine and being forced up into the Bay of Fundy. And as it comes into the Bay of Fundy, all the water that's come into the ocean, into this big bathtub of the Gulf of Maine, gets forced into a shallow or narrow area. And very simply, that's why we have these huge, incredible tides. And the tides are incredible and important for a lot of reasons. And one of them is nutrient mixing. Now, I'm sure most of you know the term nutrient. It's just food. It's whatever gives nutrition to plants or animals. And so nutrients in the ocean, because even if they're very light and they float a little bit, over time they'll sink. So anything that gets deep water forced up into the top of the water takes nutrients that have sunk to the bottom and puts them into sunlight. And once you have nutrients and sunlight, you get plants growing, little tiny floating marine plants, as well as seaweeds attached to our coasts. And once you have plant life, you have animals eating those plants, and you have animals eating those little animals eating plants. So the Bay of Fundy mixes nutrients like almost nothing else. It's a really active area. Imagine these tides rushing in and out twice a day. And then they're forced up on these little mountains and valleys on the seafloor, and that forces water to the top. And they have to go around Grand Manan, and they also have to go all around all the islands around St. Andrews. So as that water gets all churned up, nutrients get into sunlight, and we get an incredible amount of plant growth and animal growth from it. So much so that we refer to this area, the Outer Bay of Fundy, almost basically to St. John. We call it the cafeteria of the Bay of Fundy because it produces so much food. So I really want you, and I could talk lovingly about the Gulf of St. Lawrence and Northumberland Strait too. So if you live in those areas, feel free to reach out if you want to know why those areas are so cool. But because of time, I've limited myself to the Bay of Fundy because it takes a little explaining to understand the tides. But you know, we really can think of the Bay of Fundy as a cafeteria for the North Atlantic Ocean on this side of the ocean. And it really is a special place, and it's been a cafeteria for people too, as we'll discuss. So who lives here in the Bay? We've talked about how nutrients mix in the Bay of Fundy, growing plants which grow animals. So here are some of the animals that come to enjoy it. Up at the top here, you see one of my favorite birds to see on the water, an Atlantic puffin. So Atlantic puffins are just tiny. We often think of them as big because they look a bit like penguins, but they're actually just little guys. And they like to lay their eggs on rocks out in the bay, rocky islands on the Bay of Fundy, where predators like bears, weasels, muskrats, raccoons can't get to them, right? So they're out in the ocean. And so they lay their babies, and then they can swim out, fly out into the ocean. And they're actually really good swimmers. They dive around to catch fish to bring back to their young. So they're coming here for that cafeteria. We also hear a lot about lobster. We're used to seeing lobster in traps, in tanks in our grocery stores, or if we're lucky on someone's boat. But I love this image that shows us a lobster in its natural habitat. At certain times of their life cycle, they like to hide under rocks. So that's what this one's doing. And this also shows us the ecosystem a lobster's part of, especially because we've got that cool little sea urchin, likely munching seaweed that's growing on that rock. Here's an image from a microscope of some of the tiny critters called zooplankton and phytoplankton. Zooplankton, like zoos where we hold animals, means animals. Phyto just means plant. So these are tiny animals and plants that are really the driver of this food chain. And so I just like this image. There's lots of things that look like shrimps, like this guy here. There's lots of copepod-shaped things, which some of our whales come and eat. Other people who are here, other critters here for the cafeteria are this little guy, the harbor porpoise. And what blows me away about marine mammals, and Aidan will tell us more about marine mammals around St. John, I'm looking forward to that, is that they're a lot like us, right? They're warm-blooded, they need to breathe air. So they face a lot of the sort of physical challenges we face, but they do it in a very cold ocean where their food is somewhere where they can't breathe. So it's really incredible when we think about what these critters do. So they need high fat, high protein, high nutrition fish to eat. And the Bay of Fundy, though under stress, has historically been very good at producing those fish. And this image in the corner is rockweed at high tide. So if you go to the beach and play with rockweed, I encourage you to lift it up, look for crabs, winkles, little fish that might be living in the water or moist sand under it. But I like to show you this image because to our eyes, it's this flat stuff laying on the beach. But from a baby fish or baby seal's perspective, it's a forest they can hide in as they grow stronger. Here are some of our other friends. I'll leave it to Aidan to tell us all about this saucy seal here. But similar to porpoise, they rely on the fish in the Bay of Fundy. Here's a humpback whale, also a fish eater. I'm going to tell you about my favorite little fish, Zygnomegua, in a sec. And humpbacks love to munch on them. I chose this picture of an eagle because it's just cool to see. This is a 2-year-old eagle. It's a bald eagle, but it hasn't got its white head, yellow beak, or black and white coloring we're used to yet, because when they're young, they're colored for camouflage. As they get stronger and become better hunters, In the bottom corner, this cute pair of nesting gulls. It's a kittiwake. It's a kind of seagull or gull. There's actually no bird called a seagull, but there's many kinds of gulls. And they live on rocky islands like the puffins, but where puffins like to put their eggs in little caves in the rock. Kittiwakes like to lay their eggs on the edges of cliffs, and their eggs are actually a really cool shape. If you picture a chicken egg, a kittiwake egg is sort of pointed at the bottom, more shaped like a pear, so that it doesn't roll off the cliff. Because if you knock it, it's just going to roll in a circle instead of rolling away like a chicken egg would. So that's cool. And over here we have the Atlantic salmon, a fish under a lot of stress, but native to the Bay of Fundy and really important to the health of our rivers. I'm interested in hearing what Aidan has to say, so I'm going to keep marching on. And of course, there have been always people here in the Bay of Fundy. In the last few years, there's been a site in Bescotamocati, Passamaquoddy territory near me, that's been dated to 14,000 years. So that's a minimum of when people have been living in my community. This is a picture Chief Hugh Akagi of the Bescotamocati Nation at Schoodic shared with me. And this is a friend of his family's who used to canoe across Passamaquoddy Bay and harvest porpoise along the way. And I love showing this image because it shows the incredible skill. I would be scared to try and pull a porpoise into a modern motorboat, let alone being able to stand in a boat like that in ocean conditions with waves and ocean swell. And harvest porpoise. It's absolutely incredible skill. And so down in my region of the Bay of Fundy around Passamaquoddy Bay and what we call the Quoddy region, it's Bescotamocati territory. And interestingly, Bescotamocati means the people who eat or the people who spear pollock. And so we don't really have pollock here anymore, which is part of the story of degradation. But I'll tell you a little, in the next 5 minutes or so, I'll tell you a story of how people are working to try and get the food for pollock back. And of course, the Wolastoqey people and the Mi'kmaq people are also the original peoples of the Bay of Fundy. And those nations and other nations worked together and continue to work together in the Wabanaki Confederacy. So here's a little bit of recent changes in the Bay. I'll only point out that all these fishers we see pictures of, these are non-Indigenous fishers. They're holding up or catching fish in a way that they don't fish anymore because either those fish are no longer here or they're not here in enough quantities to easily fish them the way they used to. So we've seen big changes. So we need to do something. And I want to tell you about some recent signs of hope. There's been a really exciting effort on the Schoodic, also called the St. Croix River, which runs past me here in St. Andrews, Gwanisquamcook, and runs up between St. Stephen, New Brunswick, Calais, Maine, all along the Canada-US border and over into Maine. And that river historically was one of the most productive rivers. And by that, I mean that it used to have tens of millions, up to maybe as much as 100 million of these little fish called Zygnomegua or alewife or Gaspereau that would run into them every year. And all the animals I just showed you and animals that live in the Bay of Fundy love to eat these little fish, the alewife. They're high in protein, high in fat, and just perfect for the things that live in the Bay of Fundy. So for the past about 200 years, we've built dams on the Schoodic River, on the St. Croix River, and it's killed the fish in this river. This is one of the dams you see in the bottom corner, the Milltown Dam. And there's a host of dams on the river, and we used to build them without even fishways, without any way for fish to get up the river. So that, in many ways, is killing the river, right? You can think of river, if you think of the land and the oceans almost as a body, you can think of rivers as kind of the veins carrying the nutrients or the blood or what's living in the system through the system, and we blocked those, right? And so we saw the damage. We lost the alewife, the Zygnomegua, we lost the salmon and other things. And And when I started this work 15 years ago, I'll let you know I was a summer student. This job started as a summer student, and then they asked me to come back after I graduated. So take opportunities if you get cool summer jobs. They can sort of change your life as this one did for me. When I started, there were hardly any fish left in this river, and there was a lot of concern. But I was lucky. I arrived at the time where people were coming together to try and take care of this river and fix it. So I started this work in 2009. Um, and the river was in bad shape, and it was hard to be hopeful. It was hard to think that things would get better. But what it took is, I played a small part. I did some writing, research, would do media and other things talking about the importance of getting fish back in the Scoodic River, the St. Croix. But a bunch of other people were coming together too. Most importantly, a group of Bescotamoquatee, Passamaquoddy citizens formed something called the Scoodic River Keepers, and they were a group of Passamaquoddy people who worked within their own nation, within their own community, to try and take care of this river. And one thing I really want you to understand, I've asked the question, what does it take to bring a river back to life? And I've given you a hint. It takes normal people trying hard. One of the most important things that happened is that a Passamaquoddy person named Ed, who had never made a movie before, decided that he needed to find a way to communicate to other Passamaquoddy people that now was the time to put all our effort into helping this river. So he made a movie, and he went home to see his friends, family members, chiefs, others from all the Passamaquoddy communities, and just slowly over a few years built support for restoring the river. And until that point, there had been controversy. But after Ed's work, and remember, this is someone who understands the system, but he didn't have any particular expertise in communications. He wasn't trained in making movies. He wasn't trained in conservation science, but he just found a way to do it. Um, and a lot has happened this far. I'm going to wrap up in the interests of time here, but I really want to emphasize all the things that have happened to help bring the Scoodic St. Croix River back to life. I told you about the Milltown Dam, this image I'm circling now. Well, I took this picture about a month ago. The dam's gone. And just last Monday, I was standing on the shores over in this bank where they're still doing some construction, and I was watching alewife swim past my feet, Zigna, and they haven't been allowed on this water on Salmon Falls, sorry, not Salmon Farm, on Salmon Falls, the water that was under the dam. They haven't been able to use it in nearly 200 years. And so it was a real source of celebration. But 10 years ago, it seemed impossible that we would remove a dam. But it took people like the Scoodic River Keepers. Here's Ed. Here's another Scoodic River Keeper, Brian, a Passamaquoddy man who organizes with many others something called the Alewife Run, where we run the length of the river to welcome the fish home every spring. I'm wearing an Alewife Run t-shirt today. I'm not sure if you can see. We did it about 2 weeks ago. We also had protests. Believe it or not, this is my daughter Anna, who's now 14. We had a big protest on the Canada-US border calling on Maine to open the river to fish. And because we had so many 2-year-olds there, our chant was "Go Fishies Go," because that's all the little kids could say. And that's her friend Wilder. And these kids are now 14. So from when they were 2, we were scared we'd lose the fish in the river, and now they've seen a dam come out. So really what I want you to walk away with is that conservation is hard work, but it's normal people working together, building new skills together. And so my one takeaway for you would be that if you want to help, if you see a problem, just work on it with your friends. That's what I did. And people who I met along the way have since become friends. So conservation is hard work, but I think we have it within ourselves to figure it out. And we're all good at different things. And that's really what it takes. In many ways, it's not more complicated than that. And I've gone about a minute over time. Sorry, Jordan and Peace. But with that, I am all done. Thank you very much. That's my friend's boat, the All Done.
Thank you so much, Matt. I love that final message. It's very encouraging and it's so fun to hear about all the wonderful things going on in the Bay of Fundy. Um, Before I turn it over to Aiden, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, to save them until after Aiden's presentation, and we'll be doing a Q&A period at that time. Also, if you have any need for closed captioning, that is available on this Zoom today, so feel free to take advantage of that if you need. And yeah, now I'm gonna pass it over to Aiden to do his presentation.
Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming today. My name is Aiden Isbell, and I'm the Conservation and Restoration Manager at ACAP St. John. And most of my work is done on the lands of the Wolastoqey peoples, as well as the Passamaquoddy's peoples. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of the marine conservation that's going on in St. John that ACAP St. John is a part of, and giving it a community context on how the community has come together to help us complete a lot of this work. So for those of you who don't know what ACAP is, we're an environmental community nonprofit based in St. John, and we do a whole array of things in St. John and the greater St. John area. And most of our work is derived from community needs. So the first project I wanted to touch on is our community-based monitoring in the St. John Harbor. So if everyone can see my cursor, this is the city of St. John, and all of these points are sites that we conduct water quality in. And a lot of these sites have been identified not only by us at ACAP, but other stakeholders, so the city, community interests as well. And it's important to monitor these sites for not only water quality, but biotic communities and other contaminants to understand what the St. John Harbor looks like at this time period. And that can better inform later on if that baseline data that we've collected has changed, as well as inform areas that are in need of restoration. So as Matt talked about, the Bay of Fundy is full of a lot of marine life. It's a huge ecosystem, but if we're damaging that ecosystem, it can not only have effects on the bay itself, but also the upriver environments. So the mouth of the St. John Harbor is where the Wolastoq runs in, so the St. John River, and Wolastoq just means the beautiful and bountiful river by the Mi'kmaq or the Wolastoqey peoples, and it gets that name for all of the beautiful species that used to live in it and still do, but in a lesser degree. At these sites, we also collect PAH sediment samples, or we have in the past, and PAH just stands for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. I'm not going to fully touch on those today, but it's an oil-based contaminant. And collecting those also gives us an idea of where historic contamination has happened. And then we collect data on biotic communities. So biotic just meaning living organisms. In this case, it's fish and crustaceans. So we do our sampling for this project. It was 2018 to 2022. Our water quality we take temperatures, dissolved oxygen. So fish do need oxygen to breathe, and that is dissolved into the water. Among a bunch of other characteristics, E. coli is a big one that we've been collecting since our inception, since ACAP's inception. And E. coli is just fecal matter, so human waste, human poop. And it can also be animal poop. And then Matt had mentioned the bay having a lot of nutrients, but too much of a good thing can also be a bad thing. And if we're inputting a lot of nutrients from our waterways into the bay, that can overload the system. And we don't want that to happen either. This graph is kind of crazy, but I just want to point out this red line here is this is for E. coli, so the poop I was talking about. That's kind of the the recreational guideline. You don't want your E. coli levels to go above that. And these boxes show what levels we see on average throughout the year of E. coli. So this area here, these boxes are all Marsh Creek, and Courtney Bay here is actually the mouth of Marsh Creek, so where it enters the St. John Harbor and into the Bay of Fundy. You can see we have elevated levels of E. coli. So this was only for a snippet from 2019 to 2022, but believe it or not, it actually used to be a lot worse. It used to be up here or above the our ability to actually monitor it. But in 2014, this is where the public really got involved. They campaigned with ACAP to stop the city from pumping raw sewage into this Marsh Creek to improve the water quality as a whole. And it really took a public campaign to do that. Us at ACAP can't do that on our own. We do need a lot of community buy-in, and the public were the ones who, although we knew it was an issue, really championed to fix that. Now, we still do have higher E. coli levels. That is just mainly due to our city being so old. A lot of our infrastructure is really old, and we do get, during rain events, overflow. Still working with the city, though, to help remediate a lot of that. But it is one I couldn't find the graph of where it used to be, but it's a big win for the city and for the community as a whole. And then another thing I mentioned was our biotic sampling. So between 2018 and 2022, we caught over 42,000 individual fish and crustaceans at our sites. And that totaled 38 unique species. And those are just the ones that we counted. So sometimes we weren't counting a lot of those smaller phytoplanktons or even snails and that sort of thing. This is simply just fish that can move without the current, so they can fight the current. And we do see that our largest catches were Atlantic silverside, sand shrimp, and tomcod. On the silverside and sand shrimp, those are much smaller species and play a vital role in the food web for all of the Bay of Fundy. Their Atlantic silverside are known as like forage fish, so larger species will eat those, such as tomcod. But one thing we found for monitoring is we're catching juvenile tomcod. So the harbor is likely acting as a staging ground or rearing ground for these younger tomcod before they go out into the larger Bay of Fundy. And same with a lot of other species that we're seeing. This is a map of our fishing sites. Also looks a little crazy, but it's a pie chart showing our percentages of catches of those top species that we see. And the larger the circle is, the more fish that were caught at that site. So our Spar Cove site over here is actually above Reversing Falls, so that's in the Woolastook. And most of that was silverside. So that just shows how vital the Bay of Fundy is into providing food into this river system, because a lot of those species coming up here will feed many other species. And actually, through talks with Nature MB, who monitor birds right at this site, that's also their most abundant bird site. So it's pretty cool to see how both of our projects have the same abundance or large abundances at that site. And then our next site with the most abundance was over here in the Hazen Creek area, which is basically a large flat. So, and most of that is sand shrimp because there's a lot of sand there. But those sand shrimp do play a vital role in feeding other species as well as absorbing stuff from the environment. And I just want to plug some of our unique species. I haven't answered the question of my favorite species, and that is mostly because I don't have one. It's usually the one I'm working on at the time. But we do see a lot of different species throughout the harbor, and these are just some of the unique ones. And I want to point out this guy and these two, for instance, are more benthic species. So they live on the bottom, and they're a pretty good indicator of health because where they live on the bottom, that's where a lot of pollutants get stored in sediment. And if they're surviving there, then it gives us a really good idea how healthy some of these areas might be. And then we also caught what's known as a butterfish. We actually have only caught one of these, and it was after a storm event. But this is actually a species that's found more in the ocean opposed to our coastlines. So it's interesting to see that even a species that's supposed to be further out entered this area. And just understanding a lot of this data and what species we're seeing can give a really good picture of the health of the system and where some of these areas might need more help than others. What's next for this project? So this project actually ended, but we have 5 new sites that go outside the harbor a little more. And we're actually working with another 2 organizations, Eastern Charlotte Waterways, which is another environmental nonprofit, our sister organization, as well as the Passamaquoddy Recognition Group up in St. Andrews and Passamaquoddy Bay, and where Matt had mentioned the dam removal. So we're going to be monitoring species, communities for fish all the way from St. John up into St. Andrews with these other groups. And we're going to have a really good picture of the health working its way all the way up the coast and what species are present. The next project I just want to touch on is our seal monitoring. So we've been doing seal monitoring since 2018, and we're continuing on as well into this year. So in this monitoring, we collected biweekly counts. Since 2018, we've been doing this from the land. And when we compare it to the last assessment of our seal population in the 90s, we can see that the seal population has increased, and we actually have 2 species of seals now, harbor and gray seal, where in the 90s, gray seal weren't present. They didn't get spotted until the early 2000s, and we're seeing them just increase. So that's a really good, gives us a good idea of how that ecosystem is changing in the Bay of Fundy and working its way into St. John. And how those food webs might work. And we can overlay some of this data with our fish community data to better understand the ecosystem as a whole. This is just a quick photo showing some of those trends throughout the years. We can see large spikes. That's mostly in the spring when seals are pupping. So we do know that they're likely using a couple areas like Island Bar and Musquash in the spring to have babies. But it couldn't have been done without a lot of community effort as well. So we did also have a survey that people could submit their seal sightings to, and we had 111 seal sighting submissions, and this was over a roughly 6-month period. So quite a lot of community involvement, and this really helps us because we can't always be out there looking for seals. We're looking at them generally at low tide when they haul up on rocks to thermoregulate and rest, just like we need rest. We can't be in water all day. And the community really helped us out with this because a lot of their sightings were actually when they were swimming, so when they were feeding. And that gives us a really good idea of where they're feeding at. And a lot of those sites like Inner Harbor match up with a lot of our fish community sites, which we wouldn't have known otherwise. So it's a really great way to get involved in ocean conservation without being a full scientist. And I just mentioned we found a lot in Inner Harbor, where we also see a lot of fish species. So we are still working on doing seal monitoring, mostly in the Musquash Marine Protected Area, and seeing how the Marine Protected Area is playing a role in the seal population and the community food web as a whole. So if you do see seals, you can go on our website, and if you go under our harbor tab, there is a seal sighting tab, and you can just put in, you don't have to even put your name in, you can just put how many seals you saw, what day you saw them, what time. You can send me a photo as well. I always love to see them. Another project that we've worked on is microplastic surveying. So microplastics are very small plastics, mostly smaller than what you can see with your naked eye. So you need a microscope generally. And through our monitoring, we don't monitor only in the harbor or the ocean. We also monitor upstream in the Woolastook and the Kennebecasis, Belisle, all the way upstream, because those are corridors for a lot of plastics to enter the environment and get down into the bay, affecting the marine system as well. And as you've probably seen from this presentation so far and Matt's presentation as well, the marine system isn't totally separate from our freshwater systems. And they both play a role in each other's health, and protecting both of them is vital to ecosystem function and health as a whole. So through our surveying, this is how we collect our samples. We tow it behind a boat. It's called a manta trawl because it looks like a manta stingray. I didn't name it, but apparently it does. But it collects them in this bag, and we send it off to UNB, who tell us what type of plastic we have. We're seeing a lot of fiber plastic, so from clothing, but there's also some other things that we aren't sure about. But as I mentioned, you don't have to do work directly in the deep ocean to play a role in ocean conservation. Simple cleanups along rivers or just parking lots, most of that garbage will end up in our waterways, which affect the ecosystem as a whole and our rivers, and can enter the ocean as well, usually do, and can get into different species will feed on those. So like our shrimp, for instance, might pick up those microplastics thinking they're food, and then a fish will come eat that shrimp. But if a lot of shrimp have eaten a lot of those plastics, it will still stay in the gut of that fish and bioaccumulate. So you'll just get more and more plastics or other garbage working its way up the food web, all the way to seals. So if you think of how many fish a seal eats, and then how many shrimp those fish have ate, and then how much plastic those shrimp have eaten, that can really add up over time. And those pollutants don't really dissolve that well. And when they get into your gut, they can affect and cause poisoning within the body. And then on a more human level, I'm sure a lot of you eat fish. If those fish have microplastics in it, they can work their way into our system as well. So doing cleanups, although however small it is, can add up to a big impact. Another thing, tree plantings. We do a lot of tree plantings, and I should say cleanups as well at ACAP. So if you want to get involved in a cleanup or a tree planting, you can always reach out to us. But these tree plantings on the terrestrial side also have effect in the marine environment. So a lot of our plantings are done in riparian zones, creating larger buffer zones that absorb pollutants from entering the waterways. They also cool the water. They prevent a lot of sedimentation and erosion as well, which also have effects on the marine environment and our species. So however small the act is, it can add up. You can just see this photo down here, how many people there are at this one planting. Each of them would have planted 2 trees, but if you've got 15 people planting that many trees, it adds up over time. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions from me and Matt.
Thank you, Aiden. So great to learn a little bit more about the work that ACAP is doing. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask them directly to Aiden or Matt if you would like. Yeah, we're a little bit ahead of time, so we've got time if folks have questions. Hannah says, thank you for those lovely presentations. This is a great way to gain some foundational knowledge about the region. I'd be happy to volunteer actually and get to see the land and oceans and the people who are stewarding them. Any tree planting events in July?
Yeah, I assume that's directed more at me.
Yeah.
We're just wrapping up kind of our tree planting for the spring right now. Most of them will come up in the fall, just because we want to avoid this drought period because it can affect the survivability of our trees. And when we plant in the fall, the trees send most of their energy down to the roots, which after their leaves have dropped, which allows them to better get a foothold in the ground. But you can always sign up on our website. There's a way to sign up, and we send out emails regularly to our volunteer network to let them know when we have tree plantings, cleanups, and we also post on our social media as well. I think there was actually a tree planting this morning, if I remember correctly, by our climate change coordinator. So.
And could I add another volunteer opportunity? Aiden did such a good job of describing the value of cleanups. I think of it as this sort of maintenance we need to keep doing, right? Just to sort of stem the flow a bit. There's lots of other work, but I will drop in the chat a link to the Great Fundy Coastal Cleanup, which our partners at Nature Trust of New Brunswick do a real great job. If you sign up early, sometimes you can get on a boat to go out to one of the cool islands that have especially nature preserves. It's a great way to help and explore a new area or areas that you frankly can't get to any other time. So I'll drop that in the chat. And then I saw, can I just keep going, Jordan? I saw a follow-up question from Hannah.
There's also someone who raised their hand before Hannah sent another question, so I just don't want them to be forgotten.
Yeah.
Maria, do you want to unmute and say what your question was?
Sure. Hi. I loved the presentations. They were so nice, so exciting. My question was like, how can I get involved with the ACAP in St. John? Because I'm currently studying in UMB, and I just feel like it's so interesting. And with the seal conservation, super interesting. So I was wondering, how can I get involved with that beyond like volunteer and like just like sightings and citizen science and stuff?
Yeah, you can, like I said, sign up for our volunteer network. You can also email us at office@acapstjohn.org or me directly at aiden@acapsj.org. And we can set up a meeting or something to see how you want to get involved. You say you're at UMB. We also, depending on what your research is, if you're doing stuff, sometimes it can work into some of our work. So we also work with Gina Linetti, who's doing her PhD at UNB on right whales, but she flies her drone to help with our seal stuff. And we'll often bring people from UNB with her as well. So I hope that answered.
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much. Would you mind just like typing your emails in the chat so I can have them? Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
And Jordan, can I just add that maybe you're saying this, but I always use the MBM website to find my local watershed group. Sorry, were you going to say that?
Probably. No, I wasn't, but that's a good point.
Because for folks in other parts of the province, I love ACAP's work. I got to hear Aiden and his colleagues' presentation this week at a conference, and I was keen to hear it again because it's super cool. And there's, in Charlotte County, but also in the Fredericton area, and MBN is your go-to. On that website, you can find who's working in your local region. And there are people all over doing similarly cool stuff to Aiden. And I mean, ACAP St. John's got the lockdown on seal work, and that's pretty cool, but other people do cool stuff too. So yeah, that's a great question, Maria.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Matt. That is very true. Yeah, anyone's always able to email us at NBEN or even email me directly, and I'm happy to connect you to some local groups that are doing great work. Okay, I'm going back to the chat and answering Hannah's second question, which was she'd like to hear more about what you are doing in terms of outreach activities. How are you informing the public about your work and motivating people to take action? And I'm assuming this is again towards ACAP, but Matt might have some things to add as well.
Well, Aiden unmutes. I'll just say we do quite a bit of outreach in a variety of ways. I did wear out my voice speaking to 8 middle school classes last week, and I was really it was beautiful because it was in St. Stephen where the dam has just come out, and just the excitement of those kids. And I have a middle schooler in my home, and I don't think middle schoolers always find adults interesting. But the excitement of those kids over seeing the fish come back and that real deep understanding was beautiful. We have a communications team at the Conservation Council, so I'd encourage you to check out our website, sign up for newsletters, and follow our social media. They do really good. They do a way better job than I could do of my own of talking, sharing information about complex issues and giving opportunities to help. And we do markets, and sometimes we do various kinds of public events. We just had the Alewife Run a few weekends ago. But social media of the various groups in your region is a really good way to keep on top of the various events that are happening. That is one piece of the outreach. So I'll pass it over to Aidan because they're exceptional at this stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I will echo pretty much everything Matt said. I am not as good at the outreach and education stuff as I should be, but we also have a lot of other coordinators at ACAP who are excellent at it. Peace, for instance, who is on this call right now, is great at it. And she helps oversee a lot of our education stuff. But I was reading the question again. For informing the public, we also go to a lot of schools, and schools also come to us and talk about whatever topics they want to, everything from kindergarten right up to high school, university as well. Sometimes we take them out to our sites and do a fishing demo. We get to play with the fish, same with water quality, tree plantings. Whenever we have a tree planting, we always bring a local context to the site and why we're planting that site to let everyone know the reason behind it. We also go to markets and sometimes host other events like this one. We co-host to inform the public on what we do. We also will post on our social media a lot of things, and our website, which is currently getting an overhaul right now, so it will look better shortly. But we post all of our reports on there as well so that people can stay informed about what is going on. And if you have specific questions about stuff, you can always call our office or email us, and we'll get you in touch with the right coordinator for whatever your question is.
Thank you, Aidan and Matt. The next question was from Gordon, and it is, what role do seal populations play in threatening other fish, such as salmon?
Yeah. Hi, Gordon. Gordon used to be on our board, so great to see you here. I can talk a bit, and Matt might have something to add. We're trying to collect scat samples, so poop samples from seals this year, and we just started last year doing it. So we're trying to collect for the next few years to better understand what their diet is. And that's mostly in the Musquash MPA where we're looking for those. And that can help us better understand what role they're playing here locally. They do eat salmon. We also work on the Inner Bay of Fundy salmon population, which is the only listed population in Atlantic Canada. And they're facing a lot of different threats, as salmon is as a whole. So they do play a role in threatening it, but they're also just one of the drivers. There's also climate change, warming waters, habitat degradation, and kind of all those stretches of the whole is what is lowering the population to a degree. There's a bunch of other things I haven't mentioned. The at-sea survival is a question that a lot of people are trying to figure out. Where their numbers are so low, when you see fish school up, like Matt had a great photo of alewife schooling up. There's a phenomenon called, I can't remember what the actual name is, but when you have so many less fish, it's harder to avoid in your school to avoid predators. So that is another
Predator cover.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was going to say.
And then there's also fish farming and a whole slew of things.
So just building on what Aidan says, and by my count, Aidan, I'm up to 6 times you've said the word poop. So I just want to note that. I think it's awesome.
That's accurate. Yeah.
I was going to talk about whale poop, but I ran out of time because it's an important source of nutrient mixing in the ocean, but no matter. That idea of what's sort of harming an individual species like salmon, it's something that I really worry about too, Gordon. And what I've found, what partly it gives me hope, but real hope, because it's something that's actually happening, is with the kind, and why I've spent so much time devoting effort to restoration on places like the Schoodic, St. Croix, is it's exactly that. If we have, right now we have around 1 million fish probably going up the Scudic. Within the next decade, 10 million, 50 million over the next 20 years is entirely possible with the plans for improved fishways and fish passage at the various dams. So, the more food there is, the more the populations under stress are less likely to be eaten. And, alewife populations are designed to be eaten, and other forage fish. The whole evolutionary strategy is to have a whole lot of babies and have some small percentage of you survive to spawn again, right? That's a healthy population of alewife, is tens of millions having trillions of babies and then tens of millions coming back. And so for me, it's looking at the different stresses, but just if we beef up that ecosystem, then everything's got a better chance. And that's why I think it's because things have been getting better on that forage fish population thing is probably why I'm still doing this job and tend not to cry myself to sleep because it's getting better, right? That's a really good question. It's a tricky one,
Yeah.
Gordon.
Yeah, it is. And I wanted to add both seals and salmon are native populations, native species. So they have evolved with each other. And there's a really good example of striped bass and the Miramichi, their population coming back. And even though their population's back and could be threatened to salmon, we don't want to try to destroy another population that's native here to bring another one back. We need to find other ways to help restore. And that is another part we're looking at the seal population. Is it above a natural limit right now? We're working with DFO to try to figure that out. And that can play other implications into the management of some of these other species.
Perfect. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions right now. If you have any other questions, we might have time at the very end, or I know Aiden and myself have put emails in the chat so that you can follow up if you'd like to. But for now, we're gonna jump into the breakout rooms, which I'm very excited about. So I'm gonna really quickly explain what the different activities today are gonna be for you to choose from. And then you will be able to go into whatever breakout room appeals to you. So the first one, I mean, this is in no particular order, but one of them is going to be a creative projects room. So if you are interested in maybe like making a poster or some sort of collage to express your feelings and thoughts on some of the things that you've learned today, maybe how you could communicate some of those things to folks in your communities, or engage them in marine conservation, and like doing that through making some sort of art piece. We're going to have one room for that, and Peace from ACAP is going to be with you in that room. And then there is going to be another room that I believe Aiden is going to lead, where you're going to be filling out a survey from the Fisheries and Oceans Canada that is all about this plan that they're coming up for marine protected areas in the Bay of Fundy, and it's super important that we have people from the community filling that out and participating in that survey consultation. So you'll have a little bit of time to participate in that and take action in that way. And then finally, there's going to be a room where we're just going to talk about some of the things that we've learned today and maybe other ways that we could take action together on these topics in our communities to bring more awareness to them and just have an impact. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I need to figure out how to make breakout rooms. Create.